Hello. Welcome to North Country History. I'm Rob Burg, and I am your guide to the forest history of the Great Lakes region. And I'd like to welcome you to Season 2 of the podcast. Thanks for sticking along with me this far. And for those who are joining for the first time, welcome. So today we're going to just kind of do an introduction to what we'll be doing for this season and recapping first of what we did in Season 1. So sit back, settle in, and enjoy the show. North Country History with Rob Burg, your podcast on the forest history of the Great Lakes region. Okay, so this is Season 2 of the podcast. I've been told that most podcasts don't make it this far, so I guess this is an accomplishment that I'm now kicking off Season 2. We did 13 episodes of the first season, 12 regular episodes, and then we had one bonus episode in April. And now it's beginning of June, and Season 2 is kicking off. But before we get into what's going to happen in Season 2, for those who have just joined us for the first time, or maybe you've recently started listening and you haven't caught up on everything yet, I'm just going to kind of go over what this podcast is and what I've covered, what we've explored in the first season of the North Country History with Rob Burg. And well, of course, the theme, the mission of this podcast is to share stories, share the history of the forests of the Great Lakes region. And my geographical view of the Great Lakes region is the states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and the province of Ontario, Canada. This is what kind of makes up the historic Lake States or Great Lakes region that was important for the lumber industry of the 19th and early 20th century, and kind of gives that Northwoods feel of the upper Great Lakes, the Midwest, and for central Canada. And a great area for not only economy or economics of the lumber industry, but prior to that was the fur trade, the Great Lakes fur trade that was contested for a couple of centuries between the French in Canada and the British in both Canada and in the American colonies, what became the United States. And then with the United States and Britain after the American Revolution up until the fur trade petered out in the Great Lakes region around the 1820s or so. So that's something that we'll talk about throughout. But the lumber industry is what kind of was the focus through most of the 19th century and into the 20th century. And then the environmental damage, the ecological damage, wildfires and erosion and other environmental devastation as an unintended result of the lumber industry, and the reforestation and conservation since then, recreation, and modern uses of the forest as well. So those are what we'll cover, or what we have been covering in this first season, and now going into the second, and hopefully many seasons to go or to come yet. My first season, the focus was mostly on Michigan. For those also who don't know me yet, I am a environmental historian from Michigan. I live in the small city of Chelsea, located 15 miles west of Ann Arbor in the southeastern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan, about an hour's drive from downtown Detroit. But I spent 18 years of my early professional career living and working in Grayling in the northern lower peninsula of Michigan. I operated I was the historian, site manager of the Hartwick Pines Logging Museum for the Michigan History Museum. And along with that, also oversaw the management of the Civilian Conservation Corps Museum at North Higgins Lake State Park. That was on the site of the historic Higgins Lake Nursery. Now just a historic site, but was the first state-operated forestry nursery going back to 1903, 1904, and in use until 1965. I also did other work with them. I oversaw the interpretive program of the Tawas Point Lighthouse for a few years. I did a little work with the Sanilac petroglyphs, a Native American historic site in the Thumb region of Michigan. And after my time with the state, I worked with the Lovell's Township Historical Society as their museum director for both the Lone Pine Museum, which was their local township history museum, and for the Lovell's Museum of Trout Fishing History, the only trout fishing history museum in the state of Michigan. And that was also very important for me developing as an environmental historian. Along with that, because that was only a part-time employment and seasonal, I was an archivist and genealogy expert, not really an expert, but the person in charge of genealogy programming for the the Crawford County library system, which was the Devereaux Memorial Library in Grayling and the Frederick Township Library. And I did a lot of history programs for them, just like I did throughout all the jobs I had in northern Michigan. So unfortunately, I had to come back to southern Michigan in 2016, and then in 2017 for a few years, I worked in Nebraska at the Sturr Museum for the Prairie Pioneer, and that was kind of a whole nother aspect of environmental history, interpreting the development of the prairies in the mostly in the 19th century, with settlement along the overland trails through there and the Transcontinental Railroad. But so anyways, that's me in a nutshell. I came back to Michigan, and this is what I do now in the historical profession. But so the topics we covered in season 1, as an introductory, was the white pine, Michigan's green gold, because the lumber industry in Michigan and the Great Lakes region was really focused on the white pine. And so I wanted to introduce everybody to that. And because the lumber industry is really what made the forest history in our state, I did the next 4 episodes focused on the lumber industry in Michigan. Michigan's early lumber industry, which was kind of the beginnings in the early 1800s, kind of around the 1830s, 1840s, up till the post-Civil War period. And then Michigan's lumber boom, which was late 1860s up to about 1890. And then we branched off a little bit to winter logging because much of the lumber industry took place in the winter time. It was seasonal. Easiest to move the logs after they've been cut was on roads of ice and snow, and took them to the rivers. And in the spring thaw, we had the river drives. So the episode after that was river drives and river hogs. Now, you can go back and listen to all of these episodes on whatever podcast provider that you're listening to. You'll see that all of the previous episodes are available to hear. So after that, that was episode 6. Episode 1, I didn't mention, was the introduction to North Country history. So getting to know me, which I kind of reiterated that here. But so jumping to episode 7, we went away from the lumber industry to the birth of reforestation. And that was a visit to the historic Higgins Lake Nursery at North Higgins Lake State Park, and talk a little bit about how reforestation began in Michigan with the visit there at the nursery and the Beale Plantation outside of Grayling. That area, Grayling, Roscommon, Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, that was kind of the epicenter for the beginning of reforestation in Michigan, taking place in the late 1890s, but mostly the early 1900s. 1903, 1904 were very important years. And then, I take that back. The Beale Plantation, 1880s. So 1880s, 1890s, but then really kicking off in the early 1900s, 1903, 1904. Took a trip up to the Upper Peninsula to the Kingston Plains. And the Kingston Plains is just a very surreal landscape. It is a burned over landscape. After the logging, then wildfires came through. And they happened everywhere, wildfires. And we'll talk more about those here in season 2 and then in seasons to come when we focus on specific wildfires. But the Kingston Plains had a lot of fires go through. And it really never allowed anything to kind of take root, new plant life. And it just baked the soil robbed it of all nutrients in there for a very long time. We're talking decades. And even now, more than a century after the last fires that have gone through, some of it is still very much a moonscape. Not literally, but it's a very barren still. And the main feature is still the burned out carbonized stumps left over from the logging in the 1890s, early 1900s. And then an episode that is very dear to my heart is that we went back to Hartwick Pine State Park, where I was at for 15 years. And I spoke with Hillary Pine, who has my old position as the historian. And although her duties are different than what it was when I was there, but she gave, really told a lot of great information on Karen Hartwick, who was responsible for the creation of Hartwick Pine State Park. And there's not a lot of women who show up in lumber and forestry history, but Karen is certainly one that had a lot of a connection to it. Her father, Nels Mickelson, was a partner in several lumber companies based in the Grayling area. The Salling Hansen Company in Grayling was the one he was most known for, where he served as the vice president of the company. So she explained how the park was created, Hillary did, and through a great, very charitable donation by Karen Hartwick in the memory and honor of her late husband, Major Edward Hartwick, a Grayling native who died during the First World War. In episode 10, I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, discussing Sigurd Olson and the meeting of wilderness. And Sigurd Olson is one of the great voices for wilderness preservation. He lived from I think he was born in 1899. I'd have to go back and listen to the episode or check my notes, which I don't have in front of me, and lived till 1982. And he was a great leader in preserving wilderness. He was born in Chicago, grew up in Wisconsin and 3 different small towns in northern Wisconsin. And then most of his adult life was spent in Ely, Minnesota, where he was a teacher and then dean at Ely Junior College. And then he also was a canoe guide during the summer, and then became a co-owner of a guide service there, outfitter in Ely. But he also went on a lot of adventures, not just in the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness area that Ely is the jumping off point. And he helped to get that protected and created as a official recognized wilderness through the National Forest, the Superior National Forest. But he also went throughout the world, but a lot of Canadian adventures with friends, and he wrote about them. He was a great writer of wilderness, and he served on the boards and presidencies of the Wilderness Society, the National Parks Association, and a number of other environmental and wilderness organizations. And his writing I was first introduced to in the early 2000s, and I've been a fan of his ever since. we came back to Hartwick Pines the following week. It was supposed to be back-to-back, but had a little mix-up there, and that's why Sigurd Olsen stepped in. But I went back to Hartwick Pines to speak to my old colleague, Craig Kasmer, who's been the longtime park interpreter. He's been there since 2001, or 2002, I believe. Craig came to the park, yes, and but he's the naturalist, park interpreter. He's a forester by training, and he spoke about the wildlife of the forest and how the forests, particularly old-growth forests, were important for wildlife and the type of wildlife that could be found in the forest. And he and I went on a lot of adventures, leading groups, snowshoe hikes and guided hikes of different types, and any types of wilderness or wildlife experiences during those hikes were always very popular. And the next episode was episode 12, and that was supposed to be my final episode of the season. And I visited one of my favorite places, was DeWard, the last of Michigan's lumber boomtowns. DeWard is located on the Manistee River, in the very northwest corner of Crawford County, where Crawford, Otsego, Antrim, and Kalkaska counties all come together. And Crawford County is the one that Grayling is in, and the little town of Frederick, where I lived at for a few years. But to the northwest of Frederick on the Manistee River was at one time, for about 12 years, the small village of DeWard. It was a lumber town, a company town of the David Ward estate. So it was DeWard, D-E-W-A-R-D, spelled as the post office and as the town name. And it existed solely for the heirs of David Ward, one of the great lumber barons or lumbermen in Michigan. Lumber baron is kind of a derogatory term, but they didn't all cut and run. But with David Ward, his will stipulated that his heirs had to liquidate his estate's assets in 12 years. And that included a large amount of uncut pine. And that's what the town of DeWard was created, was to cut lumber off that pine. They established a number of camps. They had railroad go through the area, and they built a town around the big lumber mill, the big sawmill on the Manistee River. And so we talked about the DeWard, its lifetime as a lumber town, and it was truly one of the last boom towns. We consider the end of the white pine era to be about 1910. DeWard lasted till 1912, so right there at the end. And that was the end of season 1. But then I decided I had more to share, and that was mid-March was when season 1 ended. And in early April, I got to thinking where we were having some crazy late winter weather in early spring. And so I went back to the David Ward's autobiography and talked about one of his great timber cruising adventures that took place in March and April of 1854, and going up to the area that would later be the DeWard estate area, and where he went on a timber cruising trip with one singular colleague, John Bailey. They did have a couple of packers to help pack in equipment and supplies for them, and then the packers turned around and headed back south to the Saginaw area and then to Detroit. But David Ward and John Bailey stayed up for about 6 weeks looking at timber at White Pine to purchase. And they did that while they were competing with other timbermen, other timber cruisers who were looking for land for the St. Mary's Falls Shipping Canal Company, which was the company that built the first Sioux locks in the 1850s at Sault Ste. Marie, and their payment from the state of Michigan, who funded the building of the locks, and that was land grants. And so they were looking at what lands they wanted to purchase. And so David Ward won the race to select and to purchase the lands. So that was the wrap up of season 1, and that was just about little over about 7 weeks ago that we finished up, because now we're looking at it's June 2nd and it's the start of season 2. And so, of course, we're kicking off season 2 with today's episode, the introduction and the recap of season 1 and introducing season 2. And we will keep to talking about the lumber history, but I'm also going to kind of start spreading out a little bit. So today, of course, was just kind of an overview, but then we will start in the next 2 weeks that we're going to talk about the Civilian Conservation Corps. And again, something that I know a little bit about, but I've not worked professionally doing anything with the CCC in about 12 years. I've done some programs on it independently, but it's not that I don't know the history of it, but I know others who know a lot about it, the CCC as well. So we're going to bring in a few more guests this year, or this season. We had 2 last season, and this time around we're going to have 4. And the first week, our first guest next week will be Phil Nod, who is a really excellent Civilian Conservation Corps historian. He does CCC living history. He has done a variety of history, Michigan history, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, reenacting. And but he said he likes doing the CCC now. He does CCC veterans, men that were veterans of World War I, who 20 years later had joined the CCC and then did a lot of the work in reforestation. And so he'll talk about the CCC in Michigan and about the veterans companies, along with with an overview of what the CCC did both nationally and here in our state of Michigan. The next week, planned going to be on June 16th. We'll keep with the CCC as a topic, and we'll be talking to Bill Jamerson. And Bill Jamerson, I first met him in 1998. And he, at the time, was a documentary filmmaker based here in Michigan. And he had done a documentary called Camp Forgotten about the work of the CCC in the state of Michigan. And I met him at the annual CCC alumni reunions that were being held at North Higgins Lake State Park for a number of years. The first one was in 1983, marking the 50th anniversary of the Cs. And they went up into the mid-2000s. I think the last one may have been 2007. But unfortunately, the men were elderly. Not many, we kept losing them over the years. And by 2007, there just wasn't any more or enough men there to help keep operating the alumni or the reunion. So that was the last year of it. But I had the chance to get to know a lot of the men, and Bill certainly did, both through his documentary and then with other work that he did. He switched over from filmmaking to being an entertainer. He's a singer, songwriter, storyteller. He does public programs on the CCC. He also wrote a book, Big Shoulders, a historical fiction based on an enrollee that both he and I know or knew. Unfortunately, the gentleman has passed away, but Bill will be talking about the CCC and about this particular enrollee and some of the interesting stories about him and others that he knows. So that'll be an interesting one. And so that'll be episode 3, June 16th. And after that, we're going to do a 3-part kind of a travel log. And I'm going to be talking about some of the early logging in the northeastern part of the United States. Back in October, I went on a vacation and I visited the states of Pennsylvania, New York, Maine, along with Vermont and New Hampshire. And I chose Pennsylvania, New York, and Maine particularly to learn about and to be able to talk about some of the lumber history. that took place in there, because those were three states that were important for the lumber industry in the United States before it moved west to the Great Lakes region. And so we'll start with Maine on June 23rd, and we'll talk about the Maine, the birth of the lumber industry, and that'll be kind of the early creation of it from its colonial period, and then into the early 1800s, about the 1820s or so, like that. And then the following week, we will go to New York State, and we'll be talking about logging in the Adirondack Mountains. And there is some connections there to Michigan as well, along with somebody that we've talked about before, Mr. David Ward. He was a native of Keene, New York, which is right smack dab in the Adirondack Mountains. And then we'll follow up. That will be July 7th. So we're going into July now. And we will be going to Penn's Woods, Pennsylvania. The literal translation of that is Penn's Woods, named for William Penn, who was the founder of the colony of Pennsylvania. And it was a heavily forested colony. And so just like New York, just like Maine, and also New Hampshire and Massachusetts, there was lumbering, there was logging going on. And in the 19th century, Pennsylvania was a leader in the lumber industry before Michigan surpassed it. So we will end our Northeastern travels with Pennsylvania on July 7th. So we'll do that focus for logging in those three states, and then we'll return to Michigan. Well, we'll return to the Great Lakes region. And we will have a special episode called Fire Follows the Axe: Lumber, Wildfires, and Climate Change. And this one is based on a paper that I presented at a conference 2 years ago in June 2023 for the Association of Living History, Farm, and Agriculture Museums, better known as ALFAM. And it's an organization I've been a member of for 20 plus years. And I spoke about this connecting lumber with with climate change, and not climate change like we have today, but localized climate change. And what happens when you deforest an area? And that changes the climate, the local climate. It allows for fires, and that helps to change the climate. And if reforestation takes place like it did here in the Great Lakes, a lot of that can be reversed. And so we kind of discuss that along with what's happening today. Of course, it's apples to oranges, the comparisons, but you can see that there is a connection still. And then the next two episodes, we've got special guests again. In episode 8, I will visit with Kyle Bagnall, a longtime fellow environmental historian, colleague of mine here in the state of Michigan. Kyle has worked at the Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, Michigan, which is where I first got to know him. And now he is the head naturalist for the Mackinac State Historic Parks, which for anybody who knows Mackinac Island, Michigan, Fort Mackinac, there's that one there. There's Colonial Michilimackinac in Mackinac City, and historic Mill Creek, which I think has a different official name now, but I know it as Historic Mill Creek. Sorry. Kyle will correct me when we have that episode. But he does all the natural history programs, or leads that for them for the park. And he's based at Mill Creek, but one of his expertise or areas of expertise for him is the passenger pigeon. And that had a very important tie-in with the forests of not just Michigan, but also the Great Lakes region and the entire eastern United States and into eastern Canada as well. So he'll discuss that. And then, Kyle and I also have a connection, as we were both seasonal employees for the Mackinac Historic Parks. For me, 1 year in 1988, and he, I think, began in 1990 and did it for several years. But then the following week, we'll talk to another former Mackinac Historic Parks employee, Bruce Lynn, who is the director of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. And we will talk about lumber, lakes, and lighthouses, and pretty much the role the Great Lakes played and the maritime shipping on the Great Lakes connecting into the lumber industry. And that'll be a treat. Both Kyle and Bruce are excellent historians, so it's nice to have them back to back. All I have to do for those episodes is kind of stay back, ask them questions, and listen, because they will be the experts there. We're going into August, and we're going to wrap it up with some of the technical aspects of lumber. We're going to do railroad logging. That's on tap for August 4th. The following week, on August 11th, will be sawmill technology. Both of those were very important for the changes in the lumber industry prior to railroads and advanced sawmill technology. It was actually believed that Michigan's forests would last 500 years was an estimated time. I've never seen that in print, but that was what people always said. I'm doing air quotes here that you cannot see. But certainly it was considered an inexhaustible resource that generations would cease to see that the lumber would last that long. I mean, for generations upon generations. So that was kind of a big milestone. And while Michigan was the kind of the epicenter of logging, that railroads became very popular, and then also changes in the technology in sawmills. So instead of 500 years, give or take, a couple of hundred, it was down to less than 100 years. 70 years was the industry in Michigan. And then we will finish off August with two-part episode, The Labor of Logging. And so that'll be August 18th and 25th as scheduled. And so it'll take us to just before Labor Day. We'll end the second season. We're talking about the men and the women involved in the lumber industry in the Great Lakes region. So I thought it'd be fitting to end near Labor Day with talking about the labor of logging. And yes, we'll end a week before Labor Day because I don't expect anybody to be listening to the podcast on the last important summer holiday. So we'll end season 2 then with that. So 13 episodes is the planned schedule. If everything works out, when I have special guests, and then even with some of the other ones, there could be technical issues. Not everything is recorded yet. So that's the thing. I don't get everything done ahead of time before I launch, and I don't wait and do each one of them the same week that it airs. I try to get most of them done early enough. And I'll definitely have to have them done by the beginning of August, because from July 31 to August 16th, my 2-week vacation from my bill-paying job, my day job, is going to be the 2025 podcast tour. And I'm going to be venturing through Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to record episodes for season 3 and beyond. And also, and looking at different places for potential podcast episodes in the future that I don't have planned yet. But so there will be at least one public presentation during this time. So my first night, July 31, the start of my vacation, I will be at my old stomping grounds of the Frederick Library in the little village of Frederick between Grayling and Gaylord. And I will be presenting on DeWard, the last of Michigan's lumber boom towns, for the Crawford County Library System. My old boss, Constance Myers, the director of the library system there, has asked me to present a program again. And because Frederick is DeWard is in the backyard of Frederick. It's in Frederick Township. It's always a possible program for that area. So I don't have a time yet. As that gets determined, I will let everybody know on here. And for those in the Grayling, Frederick, Gaylord areas, hopefully there will be enough of lead time for PR on that. I'm working on getting all that information to Connie Meyer right now, so she will have that to be able to promote it up on her end, and I'll promote it on my end through the website or through the podcast, through my Facebook page. If I can get some decent internet connection and launch or upload videos, I'll do a small video on my YouTube page as well, or YouTube channel as well, along with Instagram and Blue Sky. So those are how you can kind of follow along, is in social media and all of those. And in the podcast notes, I'll have all of the contact or all the connection or, the links on there. Gosh, I can't talk now. Sorry. But so anyways, the podcast tour will start July 31. And I'll be doing a program on the on DeWard again, and then I'll be exploring the Pigeon River Country State Forest northeast of Gaylord for a few days, camping up there, and then I'll be heading up to the Upper Peninsula. I'll be doing a few things through there. I hope to stop at Kitty Itchy Keepy. Gosh, I can never remember how. Big Springs. It's the fantastic, large natural spring near Indian Lake State Park, and there'll be something in the podcast about that at some point. But I'll just head across the UP quickly on the first way through, and getting into Wisconsin. And I want to do some episodes recording about the Peshtigo fire, the great fire that happened in Peshtigo, Wisconsin in October 1871, the same day as the Great Chicago Fire, and the day before the Michigan Fire, Great Michigan Fire in 1871, all happened within a couple of days of each other. And these were horrific fires in the upper Great Lakes, all at the same time. There was a lot of damage to property. There was a lot of deaths in them. And then, of course, Chicago was almost, much of Chicago was destroyed in the fire as well. So those were kind of like the biggest, or the first really huge fires in the Great Lakes region. And I'll be doing some other work in Wisconsin. I'll be hopefully taking a steam train trip to one lumbering museum in Leona, Wisconsin, seeing some old growth white pine forests, and then getting over to Minnesota, and we'll be seeing a fur trade site that the state of or the Minnesota Historical Society runs, the Snake River Fur Trading Post. Then visiting the Hinckley Fire Museum in Hinckley, Minnesota, the site of another devastating fire in the 1890s. The Minnesota Forest History Center in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, another Minnesota State Historical Site. And then I'll be going up to Ely, Minnesota for a few days. That was where Sigurd Olson lived and worked at, and I'm going to kind of get more into the footsteps of Sigurd Olson. Not going to go on a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters, but I'll be doing some camping. And if it's anything like it was 20 years ago, my last visit to Ely, maybe I'll be able to fall asleep listening to the howling of wolves again. And so that will be a magical time. I'll swing back through Wisconsin. I hope to get to Grand Portage National Memorial. It's or National Monument. It was another great fur trading site. The Northwest Company, which was a British fur trading company in the Great Lakes region. It was one of their sites. And then going to go down to Wisconsin and meet up with a fellow environmental history, outdoor historian colleague, and explore some of the northern Wisconsin, the Lake Superior region there, and then back across the Upper Peninsula with hopefully some stops along through the way and back home again to southern Michigan. So it'll be a long trip. It'll be very busy. I hope to get some fly fishing in there, back to my trout fishing days, and just enjoying the forest and learning more about it that I can share with all of you. So it's going to be a packed year or a packed season, not just what's going to be on the air, but the planning for the future. Season 3, which is, only, notes on a whiteboard right now, but some of those will come from the 2025 podcast tour. And so watch out for details for that. If you're traveling through northern Lower Peninsula, the Upper Peninsula, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota during that time period, you'll have to watch out for me. My car will be festooned with advertising for North Country History and how you can contact or connect with me on social media and on the internet. And maybe we'll run into each other and we can chat about how the forests affect you and what, how that makes you think is a love of the forest. So thanks for sticking with me this far, and hopefully we'll continue the adventures that I can share with you coming through with season 2 this year, and in the future, season 3, that hopefully will be starting then in the winter, and we'll see you after that. There will also be some special news coming up through here in season 2. I was hoping to have it set up already, but it's not quite ready yet. But hopefully will be some point through season 2 that I can announce. But I'm not going to even try to tease it right now because I'm just not sure how it's going to happen. But I want this to be a successful podcast. I want people to continue to listen in, and I want you to share it with others. So just always remember, if you enjoy the podcast, tell a friend. Already, when I'm recording this, it is late May. The podcast launch is just 2 weeks away, is when you'll be hearing this. And I've got over 600 downloads on it, which isn't too bad for, 13 episodes. Is it fantastic? No, it's not. It's a long ways to go for that, but it's a nice start. And so loyal listeners I have from all over the United States, several locations in Canada. I actually have 7 countries that people have listened into. United States and Canada are 1 and 2. But third of all places is United Arab Emirates, and also Mexico and Guatemala and Brazil, and I believe Italy was the other, and Thailand. So yes, so we have North America, Europe, South America, Central America, and Asia that we've had people listen to the broadcast. Now, that's where they were located at when they are listening. They could all be, people from the U.S. or Canada that have listened in. But thank you for everybody who has done that. And, if you listen in while you're traveling, hey, that's great. I don't listen to podcasts when I'm traveling. So the fact that you listen to mine, if you're abroad traveling, hey, thank you so much. And, so yes, tell a friend if you enjoy this. And yes, subscribe to it through, your favorite podcast provider. You can find it on the web itself at the www.northcountryhistory with Rob Burg, all one very long word there, .buzzsprout, BUZZSPROUT.com. That's the host site, but I also have my YouTube channel, North Country History, that you can connect to it there, and my Facebook page, Rob Burg Enviro Historian, and that is the landing spot on Facebook for the podcast and for everything I do in environmental history. So thank you again. I will talk to you next week when we talk to Phil Nod about the Civilian Conservation Corps. So you all have a great week. Goodbye. North Country History with Rob Burg is hosted, written, and produced by Rob Burg. Music is Crack o' Dawn, performed by Reveille, licensed through Soundstripe. Follow North Country History with Rob Burg on YouTube and on Facebook at Rob Burg, Environmental Historian.